The first thing I want to talk about is pipelines. I talk about pipelines a lot because I'm in project management, CRMs, and that sort of thing. But you can actually view literally everything that you do in a business as just a pipeline that goes from left to right. And it's a very simple concept. And if you just fix that in your mind, a lot of things just instantly become clear. For instance, I talk a lot about automation agencies, right? Well, an automation agency is basically just a pipeline that goes from left to right, where at the far most left side, you have leads that come in, prospects that come in, people that you haven't really talked to. And then your pipeline is like a process that will guide people from sales to marketing, to onboarding, to fulfillment, to delivery, to retention, to advocacy, like however the stages are set up that you want to set them up, it's totally up to you. But essentially, you are guiding a person through the pipeline that is your business from left to right. Now, like most things, you can make it as arbitrarily complex as you want. You can divide up specific parts of that pipeline into their own steps. So for instance, if we had some broad pipeline left to right, that's just the agency pipeline. And then there was a sales section all the way on the left, and we zoomed into the sales section might have different steps for the sales process. It might have steps like inquiry received, proposal sent, invoice paid, right? These are all subdivisions of that earlier pipeline for the agency that we talked about. Your fulfillment pipeline might have like a kickoff call. It might have, if you're an automation agency, like many people here are attempting to start, it might have steps like flow mapping. Maybe you make a big flow chart. It might have steps like development. It might have steps like testing. It might have steps like delivery, QA, iteration, that sort of thing, right? The big question that I receive often is, why do you view everything as a pipeline? And the reason why is because it makes it remarkably easy to start improving every single step using bottleneck thinking, which I explained and referenced in the title of the video, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more next. But before you proceed, just make sure you understand that concept of pipeline. Like, close your eyes and try and visualize whatever your business is as a pipeline that goes from left to right, and it'll help the future parts of this presentation a lot more. Now that you understand pipelines, we need to understand a little bit about basically fluid mechanics. In a pipeline, the fluid inside of the pipeline, like if this were an oil pipeline or a water pipeline or something like that, the fluid inside could only ever go as fast as it goes through the narrowest part. That's just how a pipeline works. That's just how fluid dynamics go. I learned all this in physics class a million bajillion years ago, and I've promptly forgotten everything except for this one thing. But if you remember one thing, remember this. If for whatever reason there's a narrowing in the pipeline, the entire content of the whole pipeline, all the fluid, will only go as fast as it goes through that narrow point. This narrow point is termed the bottleneck, and it establishes the speed of the rest of that pipeline. What I mean by this is it doesn't matter how big or wide or fast-moving steps are through other parts of said pipeline. If your bottleneck is, X liters per minute, the entire pipeline will only ever go as fast as X liters per minute, never more. I have a little picture over here, and it looks like this picture was created by Forte Labs. Thank you, Forte Labs. Only an improvement here will make a difference in your pipeline. For instance, if this is your sales step, this is your fulfillment step, and maybe this is your retention step. Clearly, your sales step and your retention step, they're pretty good. They're going pretty fast. But the fulfillment step slows the entire process down. So it doesn't matter how fast your sales step is, and it doesn't matter how fast or good your retention step is. Everything in your whole company, that whole pipeline analogy that we had earlier from left to right, is now subservient. It's basically a slave to this step right here. And if you understand that, then it makes it very easy to build a super simple process that helps you systematically streamline and improve different parts of your business. I'm going to call it a 4-step process. The book that I'm, thankful to have taught me how this works from has called it, I think, a 5 or a 6 or 7-step process. I've eliminated a lot of the complexity in my own life, and this is how I see it personally. If I could go back in time and teach myself the ability to think about things as a bottleneck from day one, I would be making 10 times the money. If I went back to my cold call door knocking days and I thought to myself, what's the bottleneck in my business? It would obviously be the door knocking. And, I'd sort of look at it and I'd say, well, shit, I got a couple of ways that I can make this better. I could just knock on doors faster, but I'd realize that it doesn't matter how fast I knock on the doors, that would still be a really tight bottleneck. That would have forced me to think differently about different lead generation approaches and different ways that I could have made money, instead of just knocking on about, 8 doors an hour or 10 doors an hour like I was doing before. And that would have, shaved, as I mentioned in many videos, years off of my life in a positive sense, and a lot of gray hairs as well. So that's how bottlenecks work. Now, from this idea of a pipeline from left to right, and from this idea that the fluid in a pipeline can only go as fast as whatever it's doing through its narrowest step, like your business can only operate as quickly and as powerfully as that narrowest step, basically, you can build a very simple process that I'm calling the business improvement flywheel. Here's how you build and scale basically any business in 4 steps. First, you will identify the bottlenecks. I call them constraints here because that's what the book uses. Constraints are a more general term for bottleneck. But identify the bottleneck is number 1. First, you just look through your business and you say, okay, man, I'm currently not making a lot of money. Why is that? How many projects can I do per day? How many leads am I getting per day? How many deals closed am I getting per day? How many clients am I retaining? Just look at your whole revenue generating pipeline and ask yourself, what is the slowest part of this puppy? And once you've identified what the slowest part of it is, you just have to widen it, which obviously sounds simple. In practice is a little bit different. But if you just spend a few moments thinking about this, you will realize that this is the most straightforward way to conceptualize business. If your lead generation is slow, well, then your entire business will never go faster than that lead generation. So in order to improve the speed and the effectiveness of your entire business, all you have to do is just improve the speed or effectiveness of your lead generation. Everything else benefits. And it becomes very easy then to start justifying, all right, well, if my business has been at $3,000 a month, it's at $3,000 a month because of my lead gen. If I double my lead gen, I'll be making $6K a month. If I triple it, I'll be making $9K a month. How much money, time, energy, and resources should I be investing in lead gen to make this happen? And the second you do that, your feedback cycle, instead of you spending months to arrive at that decision, it's now a few days. And then you go and you actually do it and you widen that constraint. Next is you just look for new ones. After you've widened a bottleneck a sufficient amount, you'll find that other parts of your process will become bottlenecks. For instance, that lead gen example, if you're making $3K a month and your lead gen is X and you double it, now you're making $6K a month. But if you try and triple it and you don't make $9K a month, well, now something else is the bottleneck, logically, right? Because if it wasn't the bottleneck, it would just be a direct correlation between the lead gen and your project management. Now, what usually happens in practice is your lead gen is the bottleneck first. Then you widen your lead gen and you provide substantially more leads. And then your project management quickly becomes the bottleneck because now you have enough leads, but now you have so many leads and you don't have an established process for doing project management that, that starts being the part that slows you down. That starts being the narrowest part of your pipeline. And then you start optimizing project management. Once you've optimized project management, well, then lead generation becomes a bottleneck. So you widen that, the project management becomes a bottleneck. And this is how the vast majority of agencies work. That said, it takes the vast majority of agencies years to do even one of those cycles. And if you understand this, you could do the exact same thing in a couple of months, maybe. The last step is repeat. Identify, widen, look for new ones, repeat. It's this 4 simple step process that substantially improves your ability to tackle these sorts of problems systematically. As I mentioned, this was first documented in a book on manufacturing process improvement, actually. And no, I don't just like reading books on manufacturing process improvement for fun. This was recommended to me by a good friend who I am forever indebted to for sending me down the path of that book. The reason why I really like this book and why I recommend everybody here read it is because it's written not as a nonfiction book, it's written as a story. It's written as a story about a man who essentially runs a plant and he is given a very unrealistic deadline. But by using this business improvement flywheel, he's able to look for constraints, widen them, look for the new constraints that were generated, widen those, and something like 10 or 15x his revenue in a matter of a few months. I've applied this to my own agency, and I've also applied this to the consulting space with much success. And I think it's one of the reasons why my businesses tend to grow faster than other people's, just because my feedback loop is a lot shorter. So I have a bunch of examples here. For most people, less than 10K a month, your bottleneck is lead gen. Therefore, you should spend all of your available time improving lead gen. If you spend time on anything else but lead gen, it's a strategic error. I mean this, it's 100% true. If you spend any time on anything that is not the bottleneck, you are wasting time, energy, and resources because the output of the bottleneck is directly proportional to output of the entire business. Now, I mentioned here that for most people that are greater than 10K but less than 25K, your bottleneck is usually fulfillment. These are rough numbers. They're not 100% accurate. Some people are more effective, so they can do more money without having this be a bottleneck. Some people are less. But essentially what you have is you have a business that's not scalable due to logistics. So you should be spending all of your time improving your ability to fulfill, improving your ability to deliver. After 25K, a lot of the time your bottleneck becomes hiring. You have a business that's ready to scale, but you can't because of people for whatever reason. So you should be spending all of your available time hiring and improving that hiring process. I mentioned that multiple of these can be true. Nothing in life or business is like mutually exclusive. It's never 100% or zero, two absolutes. You could have a few of these apply to you at the same time, and these numbers aren't 100% set in stone. In my specific case, my bottleneck was lead gen up until something like 30K a month. And then it stopped being lead gen. It started being project management. So I had to look for better ways to do projects. I had to look for better ways to fulfill things. So I started poking around with different methods and that sort of deal. And I ended up attempting to hire a variety of people and build a big workforce. And I made a few of these people work, but I realized deep in my core that that's not what I wanted out of business. And so I ended up improving these two bottlenecks and scaling my automation agency to about 72K a month. But I did not improve the hiring bottleneck much more because I considered it, I didn't really want to continue growing my business past that point, essentially. I wanted to be able to run a business that I managed most of the revenue myself because it was more enjoyable to me. I tend to work a lot faster. And because it allowed me time open to pursue other things like YouTube, my consulting business now, my coaching, my community, I should say, and that sort of deal. So there are also business bottlenecks, but in addition to business bottlenecks, there are also life bottlenecks too.